Let's begin the show in earnest now with a look at the papers this morning. The headlines, of course, predictable. All has to do with the president's budget presentation. Well, we have Ayodele Adio in the studio to look at this for us and analyze as briefly as we can some of the salient points. Good morning and good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me again.
All right, so let's begin with the punch. 2018 budget. Buhari bans recruitment by MDAs. Of course, MDAs will be ministries, departments. All right, so let's begin with the punch. 2018 budget. Buhari bans recruitment by MDAs. Of course, MDAs will be ministries, departments, and agencies of government. Presents 8.6 trillion naira estimates to National Assembly. While the writer there says we are more interested in budget implementation. And that's what Nigerians are saying in their reaction to this one. What's your take?
Yeah, of course, Nigerians are more interested in the implementation of the budget. With regards to the fact that the president wants the MDAs to, because if you look at the budget, it was clear that the recurrent expenditure went up way above the one of the 2017. And the reason was because, of course, the presidency said that because of promotions, salaries, increments, recruitments from the police and the military, and all of that. So you have a lot more people working. So recurrence obviously has to go up. So for that reason, the government do not want people to recruit except they are sure, of course, that they are willing to accommodate such in the budget. And so they've directed MDAs not to recruit.
In fact, it says he's going to sanction hiring agencies.
Exactly. So except you get the green light, there's no recruitment.
Now that we have recurrence still more than capital expenditure, are we still, how much progress really are we making when it comes to what to predict with the layout of the budget?
Well, the capital expenditure of the project is about 30% of the budget.
Yeah, 30.8.
Yeah, 30.8 of the budget. So we're making progress. It might be at the pace of the millipede, but that progress is actually being made, I must say.
Of course, begs for question really what many of the lawmakers and Nigerians have been saying, that it's, like she said, it's not about presenting this budget, it's not about whipping up figures, but about implementing the budget. 2017 budget is even less than 50% implemented. Yeah, and there's anyone coming on board at this time. How convinced should Nigerians be that, of course, they would get all the projects earmarked completed?
Well, you can be, like you rightfully said, the 2017 budget hasn't been implemented well enough. And this has to do with so many reasons. Of course, you might get your estimates wrong, which we overly do. We overly overestimate what we're going to accrue as per government. And at the end of the day, we end up shooting ourselves in the foot. So it's key that budget implementation becomes paramount for this government, and they have to work closely with the legislative arm of the government to ensure that most of the things that go into this budget are actually being implemented.
Well, of course, the National Assembly has said they'll put their watchful eyes on the executive to ensure that all of these are implemented. What else do we have here that's so interesting? Of course, the issue of the Nigerians, the 26 dead women. Nigerians are asking the UN, Italy to prosecute culprits. Should it go beyond just asking these bodies to do something?
Yeah, aside asking these bodies to do something, we also have to do something internally. The idea that Nigerians are going to go through the Herculean task of going through the deserts in Niger and spend multiple weeks in Libya and have to cross through the Mediterranean just to get into Italy for a life that they do not know is unbelievable. The hardship is you can't just begin to think of the hardship these people have to go through. And the reason why most of these people try to leave the shores of this country is because they are seeking greener pastures and hope outside this country. And so we need to
fix that you never really attain.
Yeah, we need to fix what's broken.
Well, a Libyan and an Egyptian have been fingered in the death of the ladies. Moving to the next paper, that's The Nation. The major story, of course, expectedly is still the presentation of the president. Let's just talk about how it's been cast. Buhari proposes 8.6 trillion naira budget of consolidation. But interestingly, some of the key projects highlighted here is of the Mambila hydropower project that is 9.8 billion naira has been estimated or earmarked for completion, and then counterpart funding, national housing project, second Niger bridge will get and even the completion of the East-West road.
Okay, I mean, haven't we watched this movie 1,000 times over? So listen, it's not about putting nice catch lines on the pages of newspapers that we're going to do this and we're going to do that. From the look of this budget, of course, the government intends to turn the country into a huge construction site because much of the budget, about 550 billion, is going to works, housing, and power. Yeah, so you imagine that the government really wants to invest in infrastructure, and of course the second is transportation, which has to go to rails and what have you. So the government really wants to turn this budget into this country into a huge construction site, and for me that stimulates the economy because
but this budget has been tagged the budget of consolidation, and some people, just like you said, we've been here before. 2012 budget was tagged budget of consolidation. Now the question Nigerians are asking now is, what are we really consolidating? I mean, you would think that you would be consolidating when you believe that you have achieved some level of success or traction in some of the projections that you made.
Yeah, I mean, it's assumed that we've made a bit of progress. I mean, we've barely walked out of the recession, and that's some progress that we've made. I mean, at the end of the day, call it whatever you want, budget of salvation or budget of redemption. If you don't get it right at the phase of implementation and ensure that your estimates are accurate, because that's the real problem here. When you estimate,
but this time around, it seems that the government, the administration is somehow not deceived and it's not even in denial, setting the $45
yes, but I have a problem with some of the estimates because we're estimating that we're going to be producing about 2.3 million barrels of oil per day. And of course, the OPEC gave us a cut of 1.8 million barrels of oil per day. So I don't know where we're going to be producing.
And then with the threat, the Niger Delta region of NDA saying that it could blow up some
we're just being overly ambitious with the estimates that we're making out of
what do you think would be the realistic estimate?
I mean, 1.8 million would have been quite a realistic estimate.
So let's just move on to another story here. Ekweme is alive, says brother. And this is coming on the heels of what we can say is a rumor now that the former vice president of Nigeria died in London. Recall that it was a doctor that attended to him said he shouldn't be flown abroad, that he should stay here. But the president, out of concern, said that he should be flown abroad for treatment. And then there was a rumor that he died over there. But the brother of Ekweme is saying that no, he's alive, that in fact he's improving.
Oh yes, I mean, it's a delight to hear that because we all thought that the worst had happened, and to hear that he's still alive and kicking, it's good news. It's good news
absolutely. All right, the Daily Sun says Avengers threat, military deploys hardware, and people are saying, is this the best option? Of course, the Nigerian Navy has come out to say, look, we're ready to meet the threats of the militants.
Boots and tanks cannot solve agitation problems in any part of the country or in any part of the world. You can't solve it. Listen, as long as the Niger Delta remains the proverbial goose that lays the golden egg, you would have to handle her like the pretty lady you just met on the first date. You just have no option.
How do you treat a pretty lady?
We'll talk about that after the show.
All right. Well, the Navy has come out to say, the spokesperson of the Navy has come out to say that actually it's just routine checks. That it's a routine drill in the Niger Delta, especially in Warri, where the members are stationed.
But why is your first response? Why is your first response wanting to put boots on the ground?
Exactly.
The reason that they are obviously offended is because they have argued that some of the promises that you have made to them, you have not lived up to most of those promises. So why not show integrity and show that you are willing to live up to those promises that you have made?
But in laying out the budget, President Buhari did emphasize the fact that, look, this government is committed to its promises to improve the life, of the Niger Delta.
Yes,
and even increase the budget.
Absolutely, you have.
I don't doubt President Muhammad Buhari's commitment to the Niger Delta, but we need to show it. To say one thing is different from actually doing it.
But I said, look, we've started, the repair of the East-West Road. We're cleanup has started. We've set the ball rolling.
Second Niger region.
The Maritime University is.
No, the Maritime.
It may not have taken off.
Exactly. The Maritime University hasn't taken off.
But at least, it's looking like we're close to
like
that.
I said, I would want a situation where the response to these kinds of agitation is the fact that you get people on the table and show them the progress that you're making and live up to the promises that you have made, rather than responding with boots and tanks.
Well, the government says it's ready to sit down with the members in dialogue for the sake of peace. So moving to the Vanguard, of course, yes, it's still the budget, but let's look for another story apart from, yes, this one is developing. Panama Paradise Papers leaks. FG to cross-check tax declarations of Nigerians mentioned. Of course, recall the Panama Papers era then. Now it's about Paradise Papers, and some Nigerians have been fingered. So Finance Minister Kemi Adeosun said that the government would cross-check the tax declarations of the people that have been mentioned, and then look for a way to rein them in.
That's quite interesting. And one of the highlights of this Paradise leaks is the fact that they are actually not illegal. It's just an avoidance of tax, actually, which is not necessarily illegal. Even though countries expect that most of those funds are actually resident in their own country than avoiding the tax abroad. But where you'd have the problem back home in Nigeria is most of those declarations were not made, you know, to the government before you took public office. So if you're a public office holder now and you did not make some of those declarations to the government, then you would have a problem.
That's why the government wants to go through the papers now.
Exactly. So you'd have a problem if those declarations were not made.
It's a form of a way of avoiding tax.
Exactly. Exactly. So
well, Saraki has said he's not done anything illegal, but time will tell.
Of course. And then, yes, Jersey Island gives condition for return of $300 million Abacha loot. Jersey Island is another country where one of the funds taken away by from a head of state.
Offshore places.
And then the government was saying that the only way it would liaise or interact or be in cooperation with the Nigerian government, and there would be any form of repatriation of the funds back to Nigeria, would be if it was directional. It was a two-way conversation that once a third party is included, that Jersey Island as a nation would not honor any form of cooperation with the Nigerian government.
Isn't it funny or sometimes overly offensive that international banks or international community have to give you conditions for your own money at the end of the day? I mean, let's
well, we brought it upon ourselves. I mean, when we take our funds to those countries.
Even if we have brought it on ourselves, we sat on the table several times with most of these international communities who have talked about, who've paid lip service to the fight against corruption, who have talked about being people of integrity before the entire world. And when it's time to do the nitty-gritty, they turn back and they stab you at the back. So enough of all of these conditions that they're giving us. The monies are our monies. If the Attorney General has filed and showed you that we are going to put this money, in fact, it doesn't even matter what we're going to use this money for. Because
so some have even said, what effrontery to even say that you want us to tell you what we will use the money for.
All right, finally. The country could frustrate the process of releasing the money to Nigeria.
Yeah, they could, but at the end of the day, it means they're just paying lip service to what they talk about when we sit around.
Isn't it about their own interest at the end of the day? This day reporting, of course, still talking about the budget. Buhari doubles down on infrastructure, proposes 8.6 trillion naira spending bill. Well, lawmakers subtly registered protest over non-funding of constituency projects. Of course, that was in the news only lately as per what, you know, the reactions of the National Assembly as they heard that the president was coming to lay out the budget. Oil spills linked to infant deaths in Niger Delta.
Well, that's very sad.
Very grave.
Very, very, very sad. And you know, this is part of the agitations that the people of the Niger Delta consistently have made over the years. That the oil spills are killing their people. It's killing their habitation. It's killing their farmlands and their fishing culture. And we seem not to have paid attention to these over the years. And it's really, really sad.
It's really unfortunate. Unfortunately, let's go back to this vanguard. This Mr. and Mrs. I find it very, very interesting. Maybe it's something we should incorporate. There are rumors making the rounds that some free girls just moved into the neighborhood. I want you to be very careful. That's a woman telling the Oga. And the Oga replies, there are more dangerous people out there, like armed robbers and kidnappers. Why should girls scare me? All right.
It brings to the surface again that the need for more security in the country, because, of course, no country will thrive without adequate security.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ayodele Adio, thank you so much for looking at this for us. We're still keeping you. We'll be looking at more issues this morning in the budget. No problem.
Well, the budget of the 2018 budget has been tagged budget of consolidation of earlier budgets. About how workable have the budgets been? There have been protests of no full implementation of the 2016 budget, and of course people are complaining already that about less than 30% of the 2018 budget has been completed.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, with this 2018 budget, the medium-term expenditure framework was not even approved before this budget was put out there by the president.
But lawmakers are promising that they would have to look at the MTEF now before looking at the budget. Okay, so thank you for still staying with us, Ayodele Adio. Let's look at the way it's been spelled out. Capital expenditure is going to be 2.428.49 trillion naira. 2.4 trillion naira. Yeah. And then recurrent expenditure, meaning that you're paying money to salaries and then overheads and all that. That's just 3.49 trillion naira, more than capital expenditure, which is supposed to help boost your economy, develop your country. And then you have debt service, the debt weight. Yeah. It's 2.014 trillion naira. So which worries you more, the amount for debt servicing or even the recurrent expenditure?
Everything worries me, actually. Of course, the government have said that they will be borrowing about 1.6 trillion naira, 50% of which will be raised from international market, 50% will be sourced locally.
50-50 both ways.
Yeah, and of course, the remaining 308 billion will be sourced from the privatization that will be driven by the Bureau of Public Enterprise in Nigeria.
Especially the non-oil assets.
Yeah, exactly, especially the non-oil assets, which I find a little welcoming. However, I'm still a little worried because our debt has increased from the 2007 and is increased now, same as our recurrent expenditure has also increased, while capital projects have remained static at the end of the day. So, like I said earlier on, the only consolation in this budget is that we're going to be spending huge on infrastructure, which is works, housing, and power. And of course, we'll be spending a whole lot on transportation, which will be about building rails, airports, and what have you. In that light, I am a little optimistic that we're going to have a huge construction site in the country where people will be put to work, where contracts will be issued and construction companies will work and people will have jobs, and there should be some circulation.
If implemented.
Yeah.
But of course, I mean, some people have said, especially economic experts, you know, that actually holds the key to Nigeria's economic development.
It does.
Let me quote what President Buhari said in trying to look back and then look forward to the 2018 budget. He said, only tailored Nigerian solutions can fix Nigeria's problems. So the question is, to what extent really have we, you know, does this hold true? Whether you're talking about the 2015, 2016, 17, and hopefully 2018 budget that we're still looking forward to.
Yeah, well, in an
can we say really that it's about Nigeria finding its own peculiar way of solving its own peculiar problems?
There's nothing peculiar about our problems here. You know, I hear this rhetoric usually in Africa, solving Africa's problems with African solutions. They're just buzzwords at the end of the day.
But doesn't that make sense?
Our problems are not really peculiar. They are simple problems that are being solved by countries globally. And all we simply need to do is copy and paste at the end of the day. I tell you a problem. You see, we're trying to climb the mountain with a donkey here in Nigeria. The real problem, the real elephant in the room is the size of our budget at the end of the day. If you look at other African countries, I give you South Africa, for example.
Yes.
South Africa has a population of 60 million people. Last year, it budgeted $114 billion. That leaves an average South African with $1,900 in the share of the budget, right? If you take Angola, for instance, Angola is about 40 million people, budgeted about $44 billion last year, leaving $1,400 for an average Angolan. If you look at a country like Kenya, Kenya is 48 million people. They budgeted about $25 billion last year, leaving about $508 to an average Kenyan. Nigeria budgeted $20 billion last year. For how many people? 180 million people, leaving with us with $111 per Nigerian. So you see how
and even these budget estimates for 2018 as well is still less than $25 billion.
So that's the problem. So that is the problem. The real elephant in the room is that we don't have a real huge budget as we think we should have. So many African countries are delivering better goods to their people than we are doing.
Well, would you say it's because that Nigeria has not been able to really tap into diversifying its economy and it's import-driven? So that's somehow...
yes. I mean, diversification has always been lip service for us. And in fact, that's one of the challenges I also have with the budget. The little worry I have is that we're estimating that we're going to be collecting about 4.4 trillion naira from non-oil revenues. And I'm here wondering how we're going to do that. Our tax to GDP ratio is still 6%. except by some magic wand that we're going to increase that tax to GDP ratio from 6% to 12% in the next 12 months, or except we're going to find some efficient model of collecting better revenues through the customs, through all that. I just do not see us collecting 4.4.
But even after making more money, really, at the end of the day, about 2/3 of all tax revenue annually, we understand, is being used to even service debts.
At the end of the day, and you see, another problem we have, I mean, it's not just this administration. Over time, in fact, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala had actually complained about this. Complained about the fact that there's a lot of tax waivers being given by the government. At some point, I think between 2011 and 2013, she said about $1.4 billion had been given away in tax waivers.
And you still have, and you still have VADs right now.
It's still happening. There's a lot of tax waivers,
voluntary assets
and income
declaration scheme, which is supposed to give a 9-month window to tax defaulters to get everything set, so that going forward, they will pay for defaulting in their taxes. So hopefully this would help, get something in. But the president said also very curiously, that recurring under remittance of operating surpluses by state-owned entities is absolutely unacceptable. Now, is this an argument for privatization?
I mean,
or the sale of some of our, moribund national assets?
Well, I'm not sure what, the president intended by that. But of course, at the end of the day, that is when we'll remember that we're a federal country. When it comes to issues like this, we'll remember that we're a federal state, and governors will want to put their muscle left, right, and center. I mean, you recall a few days ago, we were told that we did not have the right to know how much were used in the Paris bailout funds, by state governors, that we didn't have a right to know. So I like to leave that between the president.
Well, in saying that, the president actually pointed out the case of JAM, that, over a decade, JAM only remitted some 50 million.
Oh, yes,
50 million naira. And now...
last year, they remitted about 3.something billion.
7.8 billion. That's what the JAM registrar.
And that's amazing.
That's huge.
That's amazing. I mean,
that in itself.
If we were in, I'm trying to look for the right word to put so I don't sound offensive to my country. But if this was some other country, you will be summoning every single person who has headed JAM in the last 10 years before the Senate, and they'll be answering very, very tough questions.
Well, from what we've seen so far in Nigeria, when someone heads a particular office in the government, at the end of the day, it might not be that person alone that is involved in any form of...
but people need to ask questions. How do you explain that leap, that quantum leap in revenue from 50 million to 7 billion? People have to answer questions. People, it just cannot be swept under the carpet.
Like you said, heads
this
should
is
be
not
rolling
exactly.
already.
This is not just a good feeling thing that my government has been able to collect this amount of monies from JAM. People need to answer questions. How you are able to move from 50 million to 7 billion?
Well, it seems that almost all the ministries and MDAs, really, as well in the country, somehow should be looked into. If you put in mind again the NNPC scandal and then the pension scandal as well. So many scandals rocking so many.
I'm sure you know that the pension scandal that is rocking the boat at the moment was just being 2 pensions out of the 99 that has been looked into.
Exactly.
So I think every single corner and bedroom in this country has to be looked into for us to be able to move forward. There's a whole lot of money. The leakage is unbunbelievable.
Who's going to be doing the fumigating? That's the real problem. If every room is... okay, now, so... actually. And now the president has accepted that only 450 billion naira was released for capital voting, for the 2017 budget, and he's hoping that by December, that figure would have improved. So if that is the foundation, and we're saying budget 2018 is a budget of consolidation. Take it from there. This is hardly anything compared to what was, earmarked for capital projects.
I think one of the arguments the government has made in that regard was that most of the projects in the 2017 budgets will be rolled over into the 2018. So the funding will be, captured in the 2018 budget, and it'll be rolled over, but like you rightfully said, if we're just going to be doing 450 billion by
out
now,
of 2 point something
and how many
trillion?
by December.
Yeah.
That brings us back to the same sad tale at the end of the day, that we are not implementing as much as we should do, and at the end of the day, Nigerians lose.
All right.
Okay, let's not spend too much time on the past. Are we ready to move
we are
now?
ready to wrap.
All right, we're ready to wrap. Unfortunately, I'm not able to hear what our producers are saying, but it's all right. We'll have to leave it there. Ayodele Adio, thank you so much for looking at this.
Thank you for having me.
For us, of course, we will continue to break this budget
Very important.
down in the course of the week and even further down.